Today we're going to be taking a look on how to create an inspired work from Malika Favre. Malika Favre is a French artist based in London that does simplified or minimalistic illustration based off her own photography and other work. Today we're going to be using a classic image from Audrey Hepburn to be able to translate it into the simplified form. I provided a number of samples of Malika's work. As we can see over on the sides, she uses a very primary color scheme with black and white, and the absence of space or the positive and negative space help influence the overall design. In Adobe Illustrator, this is a program that she often uses as well. We're going to look to import the original image that I can start with. I can go up to File, down to Place, and I've already selected out the image. I'm going to hit Place, and I've created out a 9x12 document to set up for what would be like a magazine cover. I can hit Enter and adjust the size as needed. Make sure to hold Shift. You are scaling up an image so it maintains proportions. But this is just for basic understanding of the tools and techniques, not that we would actually be creating and using this image. So before I do begin, I want to lock my pictures in the background. So I'm going to go over my layers panel. You can see that everything is condensed on layer 1. And to lock this, I'm just going to simply click on the toggle lock over on the left side of the layer panel. This makes sure that I can't accidentally click on these layers, but I am going to have to create a new layer to work with to begin the process. If you want to rename the layers, you're welcome to. Just for understanding, we're going to keep this to a light color for the outlines. That way I can differentiate the lines that I draw. The main tool that we're going to be focusing on today is using the pen tool. With the pen tool, I have done a cutout as well to focus on the eye over on the left side of the image. This will allow me to be able to understand how a simplified form might cut with the eye. You can see again in the number of examples, she uses just a solid color to represent the eye. We don't need to go into the color of the pupil. Maybe the eyeshadow might have a differentiation, but it's not meant to distract or take over from the overall design. So if I want to take a look at the eye itself, I'm going to zoom in closer to this area, and I click on the pen tool. With this layer 2, now I can look to draw out the shape of the eye, similar to the examples I can see down on the bottom left side here. But we're not looking to draw out every eyelash. It's a matter of just getting the overall shape. So I can click and drag to create out the shape. If I want to end my anchor point, I can click on the anchor point that I just made, and then click and drag to create the next overall point. I'm going to make sure to start out with outlines just so it doesn't overlap the overall image. And again, I'm not looking for every detail, just to really define the shape of Audrey's eye. If I need to undo, I can always hit Command or Control Z. Just look to redraw. Once I have the area that I want, I can look to fill this in. I'm going to just switch the stroke color over to the fill, seeing black on the inside. And I can also focus on getting the eyebrow as well, just to give the shape. So if I were to take a look at the eye that I've just created with the pen tool, I can look to put a rectangle behind it just so I can see the difference. I'm going to change this over to a white fill and just send this backwards so I can see how the eye is defined by those simple shapes. If I need to make any type of modification, I can always click on the direct selection tool, maybe select on an anchor and adjust an anchor point if I need. to make sure it has the correct angle that I'm looking for the shape of the eye. I can also look at using the anchor point tool over on the left side navigation where the pen tool is selected. I can look to click and drag to change out the shape of the eye, but if I want to really affect it, it's going to be modifying the handles. So smooth eye overall. You can see how simple the eye can look, but still well defined and showing the overall shape and look of the feel. I can also look to possibly put in a eye shadow above the eye. Back over to the pen tool. And if I wanted to think about the color scheme, I could think about the primary colors that go into it. So shifting this behind, I can move this behind the black portion of the eye, but I still will have to modify the shape to make sure it sits behind and it doesn't peek through underneath of the eye itself. So if I go into isolation mode, I can just redefine and draw out this line so it's sitting underneath the eye, but over top of where the black ends on the top of the eye itself. So we double click outside of it, we can see a blue shade. Just add a nice another element to make this a little bit more refined. But if I wanted to focus on the whole subject, again, we look at the examples. They are very minimalistic, using white almost for the skin tone. Malika Favre has great work that was used for the Vanity Fair cover, using African American female on the cover in substitution of their Eustace image that they're commonly known for on their anniversary. But if we're looking to start defining this out, I can look at either building out the hair first or build out the shape of the body, build out the shape of the face. It's up to you on what you feel preferred would be best. Looking at the elements, I will eventually look to place the hair on top of the face or put the bathing suit top over top of the shoulders and bodice. But we can look to draw it out again with the pen tool. So I'm going to just get the shape of the shoulders first. Click and drag to get those slight little curves. I can always end the anchor point to get the curve that I'm looking for. Again, my last color that I was using was blue, so you may just want to switch it over, make sure they have a black outline so you can see it. It doesn't take away from the subject. If I need to step back, just redefine the lines to make it match as well as possible. And looking at the shadow underneath of the chin, I may want to consider thinking about how it's going to change, or I'm going to have to add in a shadow that's going to help separate the overall shape. If your smart guides are interfering, you can see how these little pink lines keep appearing on my screen. I can always go up to view at the top navigation, just uncheck smart guides. That way it's a little bit more free of how you draw out the shape. Won't interfere, won't give you false spots where you're trying to draw out the line. Finally, once you get down toward the bottom image, I can look to connect back over to the other side. Click a point, and for right now, I'm just going to test it out and fill it in with white. I can take off the stroke, but I am still going to have to draw out the bathing suit top. So I'm going to hide this layer for right now. I can hit Command or Control 3, hides that layer. If I take a look in my layers panel, we can see that this path was just hidden. But going back into it, I'm going to look to draw out the top. And again, I'm not looking for every detail. I'm just trying to get the sense of helping shape the body, help people understand, even if with a minimalistic color scheme, we can understand exactly what's happening with the overall shape. You can see there's a couple little strings. I'm just going to ignore those. Just getting the shape overall. I can look to also consider this little back tie of where the back of the bathing suit is. I can look to incorporate this as one single piece if it does touch. If they are separate pieces, you can always just make them separate pieces and just select them both at the same time if you're looking to eventually fill in with the same color. Or what we will do today is look at adding in a pattern. Just so we can see a little bit better. So going back over to the other side, just getting the full shape. If I wanted to simplify this later on, I could consider if it doesn't really show the shape of the body or help frame her well, I could always look to simplify it even more. So now I have the shape overall. I can take a zoom out just to see how it looks. I can test out the fill. Right now it's filled with black, but if I wanted to reveal that background originally from the body, I can see how it's going to sit with the body. And in contrast, I want to see what it looks like if I do apply a pattern or some type of interest on this. Eventually, what I'm going to really consider is how the shadow is going to affect and help really separate the edge of where the neck line is in comparison to how flat the rest of the body is. But if I wanted to get a sense of testing out an experiment, I could look up in the top right side of the swatches panel, go down to Open Swatch Library, Patterns, Basic Graphics, and we're going to keep with simple shapes. We'll go with the dots similar to her actual bathing suit, and I'm going to choose out the white dots on the black background just to test out, see how it looks. I could always redefine this, see how the shapes might look, but I want more of a spread out look, a little bit larger size. So what I'm going to do is go into this actual pattern that I have, double click on the pattern. Right now we can see this pattern is set to black dots, but I'm going to switch this over to white dots. So I can change out the fill, limit out the stroke. When I click outside of it, yes, the object is full right now, showing the white dots, but you can't see them because of the background. So what I'm going to do is make a copy of this. So first I'm going to change this back to black as we originally had. Then make a copy, Command C or Command or Control C, then Command or Control F. And now I'm going to switch over to the swatches that I created with the 6 DPI. We can see what it looks like with just a simplified variation of the black and white dots on top of the bathing suit top. Again, there will be more details into it. I'm going to hide back the neck piece, or hide back the shoulders. So select on the shoulder, Command 3. And again, we can see how strong the shadow does get around the neck area. So there will be a good separation for our shoulders and the body. But we still have to keep in mind that we want a simplified form. So for the neck area, I'm going to look to start drawing out that same shape. And with Audrey Hepburn, she has a strong jawline that really helps separate the face. So I want to actually test out, see what it looks like if I do consider putting in the shadow of the cheek. But I do want to maintain the jawline. I don't want to necessarily get the shadow that is transitioning off the jaw. So zooming in closer. And with the shape of the shadow casting on her, it's not necessarily consistent of how it may necessarily carry throughout the actual image. I may have to redefine this later. But for right now, I'm just going to get the shape so we can see a separation. And I may want to consider putting in a color later on, but for right now, I want to just test out what it would look like if I have a gray tone just to kind of sit in place. So I can go over in my swatches, switch my fill to a gray color. And again, if I do bring in my original body shape, reel that layer, see how it's going to sit. Now we have to really think about how it's going to sit on the face. So we want to put this face shape in with the white. We can look to find the other elements in a moment. So starting out, I'm going to look to draw out the lip shape. So if I take a look again at the examples, if the subject does have a closed mouth, she often leaves the lips full color, one color, unless there is a shadow casting over top. For right now, if I just did a sample with the red lips, just to test it out, they work well in and of itself. But if I want to redefine a couple lines, I can always go back in to reshape the form. For the nose, I can take a look that many of the shapes just use simple black shapes for the nostrils to help define that out. And that works very well for this image. I can look to draw out the one main nostril of the shape. Again, just switch over the stroke and the fill if need be. But I'm going to switch this to black. I start to get the eyebrows. Eventually I will do the sunglasses. There's more of a afterthought, or I'll do this once I have more of the shapes drawn out. So you can always hit Shift X. If you want to switch the fill and the stroke color. And again, Shift X if you want to fill that area in. I'm going to hide this cheek image just so I can see the whole shape of the face. I get a better determination on how this shadow might sit underneath of the face itself. So again, Command or Control 3. I'm going to glue the ear in the shape of the face. Again, it doesn't have to be as accurate or specifically defined as a real ear. Just trying to get the overall shape. I'm going to hide the body as well, as I can't really see the neck. I can't really see where the shadow is, but if I do take a close look, I can actually kind of see the form of it. But I can guess overall this area, eventually it is going to have to lead back up to the forehead area and where the eyebrows are. As I can't see this area, just again, switch the fill and the stroke, switches to the outside. So now that I have the shape, I can look to fill it in. I can either use an eyedropper or just get the white, but I get the shape overall. Gets a little bit tricky. If I need to move this shape underneath, I can always hit Control left bracket or Command left bracket. Just reduce it down. Eventually I'm going to choose to change out this color, the gray, pick up a primary color, but I'm really going to focus on making sure that I have the shapes overall. So I want to hide this for a moment, and I can think about the face. I want to get a simplified variation of the ear, as there's no hair overlapping it. I just want to create an overall outline. You can see the example up that Malika Favre did. Just a general shape that's going to give us the understanding of the ear. Use the eyedropper tool, pick out the black area. Again, if it's not really fitting to the shape, I can always look to redefine it later on. Just trying to get an understanding of how it might break down. So if I were to put that white back in, has a good understanding of it. For the hair, I'm definitely going to simplify it as there's a lot of strands that progress out. But I'm going to give it more of a curve to help create the sense that it is more of a curly hair. Or wavy hair just going back and forth. Again, Shift X just to switch over the color. Now I can look to kind of define it over on the end of the neck. Eventually I could actually simply cut through the ear and we could slip this behind the actual shape. So even though I am going in, I know that my white shape that I created for the face was extended past this. So eventually it will sit on top. If I do want to have the hair in front, you just have to be a little bit more accurate. Again, there are a lot of strands that I don't have to define. Remember, we want to keep this as minimalistic as possible. And if I do put the hair over top, I do have to think about the ear that I went and cut through. You can always delete that piece out and look to redraw it out. Just get the shape from the outside. So I can switch it, having the black layer over top. Now we're really starting to separate and define the shape overall of the subject. What I'm going to look to do is now draw out a rectangle that's going to fill our background. We can always fill this in with a different color later on, but I'm going to move this to the background. I can hit Control Shift left bracket, setting it to the back. And even with just a silhouette, I can still really kind of grasp the concept that it is Audrey Hepburn. You can see how minimalistic it is, but I may want to consider to, again, redefine the color. If I want to go for more of a monotone look, I could go to red. You can see there's a couple issues with the hair and the face. I want to make sure that I get the white appearing behind, so I'm going to refine a couple of these anchor points, just hide them behind the black. If I didn't want to go monotone, I could consider another color to help accentuate this. I can pick out, again, more monotone, or I can consider going with the full primary, getting an orange yellow color that Malika Favre uses. But again, just going back to gray until I do make a decision overall. I really have to think about how the shadow is going to cast and fit the rest of the body, because right now it seems incomplete with the bottom half of her body. But I'm going to go back in, look to hide out the layers so I can focus on drawing out the shape of the glasses. So once the glasses are full, I can look to, again, just go with a standard color. I could just go with the black to see how it sits, like we see with the example over on the right side here. Or if I take a look over at the left side, I could consider possibly doing a reflective scene within the glasses themselves. You see how they use the buildings in the background through the sunglasses. So I'm going to hide that layer for a moment. Then zoom in just to help get the frame, the actual lenses. That way I can consider if I do want to do a scene inside, I have the shapes. So I can start to think about additional elements of thinking about how the shadow might cast, or how I want to define the arms and armpits of the subject. These will really help create the shape of the body. So again, look at these shoulders. I do see a shadow that I may consider using. Might help redefine the neck and shoulders a little bit better. But eventually I will want to have them as one single piece. So I can really start to see how this is developing. Once I put these colors back in and these shapes back in, I get a better sense of the overall design and how I can refine this. I'm going to look to change out the color of the neck area. Of course, I want to make sure that these do overlap a little bit better. I'm going to shift this behind. May want to consider a couple other elements. Possibly putting in the bridge of the nose just to help create that separation. Just give that overall shape. I'm going to look to expand out these circles that I have. I'm going to go up to Object Expand. I'll click OK. Certain circles that I do have, let's see, we'll go out to select out of this. I'm going to look to clip this off. Go down to Trim for the mask. That way it only leaves the circles that I want to modify. So the use of these blue dots on where the white was in the bathing suit helps to create some value, helps to create some variation, so we're not just seeing one color, but we're helping to create the illusion or sense of shadow on other objects. If I want to test out other colors, I can see what samples might look like if I play with a different arrangement. See what color scheme's really going to work for me. I may also want to consider adding in colors. So if I wanted to maybe consider bringing this blue as another element, I consider these for the lenses, or maybe even change my color background to a black. But I can focus on looking to draw out some highlights over top of the hair. So that's what I'm going to look to do. I can make a copy, Command C, Control or Command F, and with the pen tool, I can help define out the shape. For this piece, I'm going to draw out another one as well. With this copy that I created, I'm going to look to select out the lines that I just added in. And I can use the shape builder to eliminate out the areas that I don't want. You can hold down Alt or Option, deselect out the area I don't want. Click in the areas that I do want, in which I can look to change these colors. Again, picking up an element of the other two colors that I'm using. Maybe bring in this blue to help really define, give that separation. Just deleting out those elements I brought in for the lines. So if I take a closer look now, if I add this in, you can see that I'm using the blue as a highlight element on top of the hair, helping give shape in a darker value. If I wanted to consider other elements, I could look to bring in new colors or look to define so that the background is not so bland. I could bring in other elements that focus on separating this. So this could be a white background or potentially another element so it blends in with the skin. Command Shift left bracket sends it to the back. I'm just going to move it up one up. Command right bracket, and I'm going to switch this over to a white. Pick out other colors or bring in this red that I use with the lips. The red to help really define the shoulder. It's up to you how you want to modify it. Again, I can always continue to test out colors, see how it's going to redefine the image. See what color schemes work best for you. See how the yellow changes the effect. And then you can test out a couple samples. If I want to make a copy of this, I can click on the artboard tool, hold down Alt or Option, click drag it over to the side. Now I have a duplicate in which I can look to modify the color scheme, see which version is going to work best for me. The eyedropper, I can match the color. Maybe it's all red, go more monotone. Again, I would have to go into, select out, modify these dots. Or maybe changing out the colors themselves, giving a darker shadow variation. I go a darker red. But you have to really kind of experiment to see what works for you, what works for the design, what overall you're going to be happy with. But feel free to make as many copies as you need or as you want, just to see what is going to be the best color combination for your design. So I hope this gave you a good understanding of how we can minimalize a photograph turned into the Malika Favre inspired type of work. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.